Assalamu alaikum. This is for the Dawah carriers, those who are trying to convey the message of Islam. I was just talking to a brother, he said, Dawah is my kryptonite. Pitching is my kryptonite. We're here to give a solution to that today. We're gonna dive into, when you're talking in a social interaction, how can I actually make it, lead the conversation to an Islamic topic? How can I make Islam sound like super cool? Right? How can I frame it in that way? How can I get other people to understand that? How can I get people to understand that Allah is the supreme? Right? How can I get them to understand the core message? Right? It takes a little bit of social nuance. It takes a little bit of know-how. The problem is most of the time, people don't know how to get there. So what I'm going to be giving you today is a simple 3-step framework that's going to take you from the beginning of opening a pitch to closing a pitch. Opening a pitch is basically, when you go up, when you meet somebody, maybe it's someone that you've known for a long time, but you're now initiating a Dawah-related conversation. For closing the pitch, it could be getting them to sign up to maybe the Muslim Blueprint program, maybe getting them to come to the masjid, right, for a program, for a tafsir. Maybe it's getting them to meet up with you again so you can give them some more dawah. Maybe it's getting them to follow you on social media, but you're plugging them in somewhere. Okay, that's the goal. So how do you get from A to Z, right? How do you sort of plant this information into their mind? Well, I'll tell you, okay? A lot of the time, people make the mistake and start asking like, hey, what do you do? And it comes across, they don't ask it like that. They ask it when they're like, hey, what do you do? Right? Or like, hey, what do you do? And it comes across as needy. I'm having a hard time doing it myself right now, actually, but it comes across as needy and like wanting validation, wanting value from the other person. It's coming from a place of taking emotionally. The subcommunication says that. So what you actually want to be coming from a place where you're offering value. First step, it's called assume rapport. So in basic steps, what you're going to do in basic terms, you're going to talk to the person just like they're a close friend. Okay? And in doing this, the other person will automatically feel comfortable. Okay? And then once you built a little bit of trust and camaraderie, this greases the wheels of the interaction moving forward, right? So you can't skip this step. These are put in order for a reason. You can't skip this step. I mean, unless you already have a relationship built, maybe you can, but that was not skipping the step. That was, you already did that part. Okay? And how do you assume rapport, right? It's just not coming from a place where, oh, this person's above me, and you know what that's doing? That's putting the creation above the creator, right? Because you think that somebody is so up there, up there in value, right? They're so like beyond you. Well, you're just creation. And why are you being so needy? It's another human being, right? So why are we putting them on such a high pedestal? Okay, why are these people like untouchable, untalkable? Untalkable. Okay? And you don't want to be starting off sort of on your back foot. Kind of like, oh, well, I hope they like me. Like, you're coming in with the assumption that you don't have value. Okay? That's not the Islamic way to do things, right? We have value as Muslims, right? As Allah has, values each individual human being, right? Right? Killing one person is like killing all of mankind, right? So understand that human beings have inherent value, right? And you've been tasked with carrying out the message of Allah. So take that a little bit seriously, right? And have the confidence that Allah has given you the ability to actually follow through on that. Okay, so having that level of confidence, being non-needy, being congruent, which basically means your actions and your thoughts, words, and actions align. And having great subcommunication is how you're going to be able to assume and get into rapport and establish rapport with the other person. Okay? Once you get that out of the way, you don't go up to them and you say, "Hey, have you heard of our Lord?" No, you first, you get to know them a little, you connect with them at a human level, right? Then what you do, step 2, it's called gathering intelligence. Okay? The intelligence gathering phase is very simple. You've built rapport. Now you're going to show them that you're listening to their problems, you care about them. Asking the right questions is crucial because people, if you're trying to talk more than you listen, you're not going to be that effective in inspiring them. You need to learn a little bit about them. Find out what makes them tick, what's their personality like, right? Maybe learn a little bit about what industry they're doing. This is more on a word, like a knowledge perspective, but find out what their occupation is or what experiences they've had in their life. And when you're giving analogies later on, you can tie it into that and make it more relatable to them. So really listen, authentically listen, okay? And basically asking the leading questions will also put you in a place where you're getting them to invest as well. The mistake a lot of people make is you come in too early and then you come in too strong. They come in too hot. You're like, "Oh my gosh, it's the message of Allah," and you're so excited. But the problem is that you are giving too much when you're not quite there in the relationship yet, right? They haven't. It's just, there's a little bit of screening, a little bit of back and forth, right? There hasn't been that connection established and there hasn't been that investment, right? They haven't, you may have, established, you've assumed rapport and established that with them. And then, if you just go on and, I call it unleashing the Dawah tsunami, right? You start talking about, "Oh my gosh, this Western philosophy is evil, and this is why we need to go back to the Sunnah, and look at all these problems that will be solved with the Islam." People will get freaked out, okay? Keep it a little bit more simple, keep it relatable, and then slowly you can work them to Dawah nerd level, right? And it's not about having to water down anything. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying, because if you come across as authentic, you can share that stuff. But just remember, it's a lot about the energy of that you're coming across. You can start talking about that stuff. And if your energy's on point, and if your subcommunication's on point, people will listen, right? But as rule of thumb, you don't want to information overload the person, okay? Attentively listening and gathering intelligence, okay? And the other thing you're gonna do is you're gonna ask leading questions. Those sort of open-ended questions, even just tell me a little bit about yourself. What do you do for work? It really could be, but you're leading the conversation somewhere. What do you think about the situation in Palestine? Right? What do you think about these events around the world? How do you believe? I have 3 questions I love to ask, actually. I'll give you those questions. I like to ask, what is Islam? What is Islam? Second question is, oh, that's crazy. I don't remember my own questions. The third one is, what can we do to strengthen the ummah? And then the second one is, what is your purpose in life as a Muslim? Okay, 3 really important questions. I like asking those 3 questions, and that will get somebody to open up a little bit. It's a little bit open-ended, and it's leading them. You're making them focus on Dawah topics. The person who asks the questions is actually in lead of the conversation. Think about a job interview. Who's in lead of that? Now what you're going to do, you've assumed rapport, you've listened and gathered intelligence. Now, once you've listened and gathered intelligence, you need to make sure that you do one thing. You need to keep an ear out for any pleasure points. So like another question is like, what are your goals? Like, what are you trying to work towards to? Okay. And what are you struggling with right now? You ask questions like that and you find out what their pain points are, basically the things that they're struggling with, the hard times, right? Challenges that they're facing in their life. Maybe that one thing that's like difficult for them right now, basically like all their problems, okay? And then you're gonna listen to also their pain point, their pleasure point. So where do I wanna go in 5 years? What does your ideal life look like? What does your what does your contribution for the ummah look like, right? Like what, maybe the guy's not married yet. Inshallah, you want to get married. We know a lot of brothers out there trying to get married. We know a lot of brothers out there trying to get married. Okay, the third step number 3, very simple. Okay, position Islam as the solution. Now, Islam is a perfect holistic system of life, right? That includes different aspects, the spiritual, the economic, the social, the political, right? There's all these realms, and the whole idea of it is to bring justice, good, and harmony on this earth, right? And the complete submission to Allah, right? No one else, not any other idea, not any other methodology, not other system, but Allah. Okay. So the problem is they haven't seen its value yet, or they haven't seen the value of a certain thing or a certain action. That's the whole reason. Or, reminders are beneficial for the believers. Maybe you're just giving them the reminder, but this is a very effective way to give a reminder. Okay? And what you're gonna do is, I call this being Rumpelstiltskin. You're spinning hay into gold, because you're taking their pain and pleasure points, right? Things that, like, you literally take their pain points. It's like their complaints, basically, right? And then you spin it into gold, right? You turn it into a solution. You take the problem, you spin it into a solution. Okay, so that's really what you're doing. And a concept I want you to keep in mind is responsibility and rewards, okay? So once a young man came to the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ and asked for permission to commit zina, okay? The Prophet worked, he was a very empathetic man, right? And he asked the young man, does he have a mother or a sister? Which the young man said, yes, I do. And the Prophet sort of told him to feel the pain of someone else, right? He asked him how someone would feel if they fornicated with his mother, right? And the young man, he was pretty disgusted. And it seems that he didn't really think of his actions from another perspective. He kind of just thought of it as his own. And he would hate the idea of anybody, sleeping with his mother or his sister, right? So after this talk with the Prophet, the young man was changed, and he said that there was no sin more distasteful to him than zina, right? SubhanAllah, right? So how you can, this society is a little messed up. I know. So maybe, maybe that exact thing, may not, it may work, it may not work, right? But the whole concept that I'm trying to explain there, and we should always try to embody the sunnah, is the idea of responsibility and rewards. So when you're trying to explain the message of Islam, you're inspired of the responsibility, right? It makes sense to you to be a steward of this earth, to be a leader, right? To spread the message of Islam, right? It's very attractive, it's very appealing, praying the 5 daily salah, paying the zakah, all these 5 pillars and all this stuff. But the thing is, when you talk to somebody about Islam, they haven't undergone the same experiences that you have. So they're not seeing these responsibilities as rewards. right? So what you need to show them, you need to frame Islam as a solution and show them the rewards, make them really see it, okay? Because to you, maybe taking responsibility leads to rewards. That makes total sense, right? But your average Muslim doesn't want to hear about the responsibilities associated with being a Muslim, even non-Muslims, right? Maybe, I mean, it might be interesting, like, oh, cultural understanding, but they're like, okay, I don't want to, like, why are we praying? Right? Like, it doesn't really, like, you know, maybe it's unrelatable, right? It doesn't make sense. But you need to put it into context, right? By showing the reward associated with that, right? So they'd rather hear, you know, we live in a desire-filled society, right? So people would much rather hear something that would give them a reward. So you need to lead with the reward, right? Talk about the Islamic system. For example, just the, you know, the family court system, right? How just it would be as opposed to what we have right now, or lower taxes or no predatory lending in the Islamic economic system, right? So you can just talk about, or maybe, you know, the true peace that you have in something that is not finite, right? Because everything else we try to rely on, you try to rely on music for your peace, right? It stops hitting, right? You get too much anxiety or whatever, right? You try to rely on maybe, you know, the opposite gender, getting in relationships. That also just ends in heartbreak, all this stuff. So you try to seek, basically you're seeking God in like worldly things, but in the truth, you just have to submit to God, and He is infinite, and then you will actually find peace there, right? Which is this kind of the spiritual lens of Islam. And then when you put that reward first, the responsibilities make total sense. Okay, so that's the 3-step process. First, you're going to assume rapport. Second, you're going to listen and gather intelligence. And then third, you're going to position Islam as a solution. And as you do this, you can lead someone effectively in a dawah conversation, and that's the key. You're leading the conversation. You're taking the person from point A to point B, right? And doing that while trying to minimize, you don't have to be so strict in following the steps, like exactly like be so in control of the conversation, but you also shouldn't let the other person start veering off into a different conversation, right? So that's part of taking lead. And finally, providing a clear action step. So that's really important. Like I said in the beginning, providing the clear action step is crucial, because you can give somebody dawah, right? You can inspire them, but that's just like going and getting your Jummah high, like every Friday, go to Jummah. Oh, I'm so spiritually uplifted, you know. Oh, like I was worried about the Palestinians, but you know, I got hope from this khutbah. Like, you know, it's good in one way, but as my brother Nasser likes to say, Islam is very much has become utilized as a coping mechanism, right? But what we really need to do is drive action, okay? So if you're somebody that wants to drive action, you know, you want to lead people into, you know, learning, reading books, attending halakas, volunteering, learning how your place in dawah, in your place on this earth, and what your role should be, your purpose in life. If maybe you're looking for the answers to what is Islam, what is my purpose as a Muslim, and what can we do to strengthen the Ummah, I'd highly recommend check out the Muslim Blueprint program. Okay, I'll put links in the description below for that. That will teach you exactly how you can actually answer basically those 3 questions, which I think any Muslim, you know, you should really be able to answer those questions. And if you don't have a comprehensive answer or a really good answer for that, that's something to really think about, all right? So while it's hot on your mind, click the link below and see you there. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.